Daniel Jones. That's what I conned Kenny Pickett to begin with. So
That's really good. Yeah, that actually makes a lot of sense.
they all stay together. Let's move into the running backs. A little more positivity to talk about.
Obvious starters.
Welcome back, Captain Obvious.
Yes, I am.
So Najee Harris. There's a lot of things going on right now with Najee Harris in the fantasy industry, and I'm going to be curious to see where Stepmom Lauren here falls on that. So his ADP is RB6. I have him ranked at RB5. Everyone agrees he's at least a mid-level running RB1. There's no question about it there. But I'm looking for reasons to move him higher than even the RB5 that I have him at, because I don't look at his inefficiencies last year. They get 3.9 yards per carry. I believe it was 4.96 yards per target last year. Very low marks as far as the efficiency goes. But when you look at the offense, you look at Ben Roethlisberger and the offensive line he had to deal with, I don't know what else to expect. I've always grown up on the idea that fantasy football volume is king. And what it really boils down to, I think, is that people just believe Najee Harris is an inefficient running back himself. I don't believe that. No. He does have some good pop. He does have some good power. And if they are able to get anybody out of the box, if Pickett and Mr. Trubisky can get anybody out of the box, I think you're going to see that come to fruition. Are you worried about his volume at all? And do you think he could actually show us that there's a little more pop to his game if he has the opportunity to do so?
Oh, yes and yes. I don't even, no. Just stop worrying about Najee Harris, everybody, and stop. Just freaking stop it. It drives me crazy because just like you said, we're talking about touches. We are talking about on the field. We are talking about production. Volume is king. And inefficiencies, yes, don't forget, they didn't have an offensive line. Or if they did, it was basically resembled Swiss cheese. So there was a lot of things that they had to overcome in the offseason. And hopefully they have done a good job of addressing those issues in order to help, pass protect and run block and doing all the things that they need to do as an offensive line. But one thing I will point out here, I'm very curious because I think that Najee Harris can get higher like you want him to if Mitchell Trubisky is the starting quarterback, because Mitchell Trubisky actually is sneaky mobile. And I think that does nothing but help the running backs that are in this situation. And I put an S on running backs. There's just a running back, right, and his name is Najee Harris. There's no other questions about it.
Well, it makes me laugh because when they bring up this idea, they're like, oh, well, they're going to try to find ways to get Harris less workload. With who? Benny Snell, Anthony McFarland? Are you kidding me? Right? No. There's nobody else to take any kind of workload away from him. So Najee Harris is one of my favorite RB1s to be able to take, one of the safest guys to take. Right now, if you're looking at ECR or a lot of other guys are talking about him as the RB9 overall. He's a great value there. Ultimately, though, he's still going to be an RB1. There's another guy I want to talk about who's going to be an RB1 too, who I have as another obvious start on this list. That's Joe Mixon. So he's at RB7 ADP wise. His rank is, my rank for him is RB6, right about there. The big thing for him last season was, can he stay healthy? And he did it. He actually played the entire year. That was the best part about him. And that was my last year. Prove it to me this year, Joe is going to be out on him forever. So he finally was able to do it. Now this season, they're talking a little bit more, though, that while they were trying to get him worked into the receiving game last year, he's been too inefficient when it comes to pass protection. And now they're talking about, well, maybe it'll be Chris Evans as that third down back. And I remember a couple of years ago, Gino Ibanard just being annoying when it came to the Joe Mixon value.
That's a great way to say it. Fantasy annoying.
Yeah, exactly. And I worry about that happening again. But let's say it does happen. Is he still an RB1 in your book?
Yeah, I say that with hesitation. Obviously, that wasn't as conviction, riddled as my Najee Harris take was. I do have so many reservations when it comes to Joe Mixon that I don't have that same kind of confidence. So for me, if I can, I'm going to kind of avoid the situation for many reasons that you just said. But main thing for me is going to be health. Now, does that mean I'm going to pass up on him? No, I will take him if that is the appropriate place where he falls to me. But what I'm going to need to do is then look at my roster and have a little bit of a safety valve that comes in that, which means I might pick up the Chris Evans later on, just in case that this becomes something that I have to deal with. But we have so few teams left in the NFL that have a workhorse running back, right? It's moving towards this running back by committee. So sometimes you really just can't pass up on it. Like we talked about Najee Harris, it's volume. So do I love it? I really don't like what he's shown me in the past, but last year did prove me wrong. So, yeah, he will finish as a top 10 if he can stay on the field, but it's not as sexy as Najee Harris, though, in my opinion.
Well, no, I definitely agree with that. But let me ask you this. We're trying to find where that line is. If you're in a 12-man league, a typical 12-man, let's say half-point PPR league, and you have, let's say, the 9th pick, and Joe Mixon's there, and he's the top running back on your board, would you go Joe Mixon, or you look at one of the wide receivers instead?
Oh, I would go Joe Mixon. Yeah,
Okay.
I would go Joe Mixon there. Yep. Wide receivers depth is incredible, especially this year with all these crazy moves that we had. So I don't know if I would be able to pass up on a definite stud running back just because I'm anxious about it or I have reservations about it. I mean, sometimes you just have to be realistic, right? So yeah, in that particular instance, I definitely would take him because the running back, value and talent drains quickly when you're in a draft.
Let's move into the Cleveland running backs. Another obvious start we have.
Obvious starters.
Welcome back, Captain Obvious.
Yes, I am.
I love me some Nick Chubb. I think one day he's going to be a top 3 running back. Right now, his ADP sit at RB8. I'm actually a little bit lower at RB9 because there's just a lot of running backs that are going to be involved in the passing game. And you also have the factor of most likely for at least a stretch of games, we're looking at Jacoby Brissett because the Browns have botched this thing so much with Baker Mayfield, they can't even go back to him. So we got to go all the way down to Jacoby Brissett, most likely being the starting quarterback. And we can lump Kareem Hunt into this conversation too. With Jacoby Brissett as a quarterback, are you worried at all about the ceilings? We know the floors are going to be there. The ceilings of a Nick Chubb or a Kareem Hunt.
No, I'm not. I'm not at all. Jacoby Brissett, yes, that's not really the elite type of quarterback that we would, like to see in, let's say a Cleveland Browns fan would like to see, leading the charge. But I'm not too worried. I think Nick Chubb can do it. And I think with the way that Kevin Stefanski likes to run this offense is through those two guys. So again, I'm going to go back to, I feel like I'm beating a dead horse here, but I'm going to go back to the volume. And even though he may not be involved as heavily in the passing game, just like you were mentioning, I don't necessarily know if that is or believe that is going to diminish his value so much that I'm going to be worried about his ceiling, because there are going to be those games where like he did last year, that he just explodes. And then they rely on Kareem Hunt for the pass catching role and safety valve. But, when you have questions at quarterback and you got to back up in and not really the starter, I think they're going to be relying even more heavily on the run game than I think they have in the past.
Well, and just to belabor your point, in case you are worried about the ceilings of these two players, last year, the numbers that Baker Mayfield put up were about the average efficiency marks of what Jacoby Brissett does when he's the starter himself. Point. That's how bad Baker Mayfield was last season. So if Nick Chubb can finish on a points per game basis, the RB10 in that situation, and Kareem Hunt can finish as, a top 24 running back in that situation, there's no reason to think they can't do it again here with Jacoby Brissett. So from that standpoint, I'm not too worried about it. Will it always be pretty? Probably not, but they're going to get there with the volume and with the offensive system. So ultimately, I'm not too worried about it. And here's something else too. I made this point in last week's show. I can't draw. I'm drawing a blank on Aaron Jones and AJ Dillon. If you find yourself in a situation where you drafted Nick Chubb first round, maybe the second round turn, depending upon where he falls to, and you're back in that third, fourth round, and Kareem Hunt is on the board, do not hesitate to pull the trigger on Kareem Hunt just because you have Nick Chubb. A lot of people seem to want to do that because, we want to maximize what we have here. When you have two guys who consistently finish as top 24 running backs, doesn't really matter if they're on the same team.
I don't think so. No. And the thing that I really like about what you said is I was literally, are you in my mind? Because I was literally just thinking the same thing.
Great minds think alike, Lauren. That's why.
Yeah, but I totally agree with you on both counts. Yes, great minds think alike. But also do not hesitate to take Kareem Hunt, because what is the worst that can possibly happen? Okay, you have a healthy Kareem Hunt and you have a healthy Nick Chubb. Guess what? They operate in two completely different worlds as running backs for that team. So there is, of course, there is going to be crossover and they are going to be kind of working into each other's touches. I understand that. But at best, you now have the best insurance policy handcuff that you could possibly have for this run first team. And at worst, you have a flex, an easy peasy flex option. Just put him right in there. Don't worry about it. So if he is available, I would, even if you have Nick Chubb or not. But if you do, don't be like, I can't really over dip in the same pool. It's rare, but these are one of those very rare circumstances where you can. And I 100% agree with that.
And I would think people learned their lesson by now, but I keep hearing over and over again how it's like, no, you got to maximize this.
But for anyone who's in my league, Don't do that.
Right. Well, I was going to say, like, I understand it from a best ball perspective. Best ball's getting a little more popular right now. I can understand it from that perspective. But from a redraft, there really should be no hesitation whatsoever.
Mm-hmm.
We have another duo running backs to talk about, and I have some red flags I want to look out for on these guys.
Be cautious of.
Or we can be cautious of them, too. We got to be cautious about J.K. Dobbins. The reports coming out about him are really not that pleasant. And what did I just talk about a few minutes ago? This time of year, everything's light, everything's fluff, everything's great, everything's wonderful. But then I'm hearing J.K. Dobbins, maybe he's not as far along as we want him to be. Maybe he's not going to be available at the start of training camp, even though he has a full, compared to the other guys who've blown their ACLs this year, they're all talking about coming back early on. He had more time to recover than the rest of these guys. Now, obviously, not everyone is made the same. And guys, look out for August 3rd, I believe, is when we're going to have Brian Scott on to go over all of our injury updates with him, and I'm looking forward to that. But if he is not up to snuff, first of all, his ADP is going to have to drop because his ADP is at RB22, and I got him ranked right now at RB19, assuming he's going to be able to go. But look at Gus Edwards. His ADP is RB51. I got him ranked at RB46. That's a guy right now, if you're drafting early August, you got to target because J.K. Dobbins can't come back, or if he's not ready to go right away, what are we looking at with Gus Edwards?
The Gus bus is back, baby. Driving his way through the Ravens. Let's go. I am in that same boat, but I am cautiously optimistic when it comes to J.K. Dobbins. Now, the reason why we're making such a big deal out of this is I just want to reiterate everything that you just said. Normally, this time of year is like rainbows and like fairy farts of glitter, and everything is happy and sunshine and rainbows. This is concerning. It is very concerning. Now, we still have time. I'm cautiously optimistic. For me, what this does is I hope that J.K. Dobbins falls and keeps falling and keep falling, because this is another one of those situations where I don't mind taking both those guys. I do not mind, because even if J.K. Dobbins can't go in the beginning of the season, if I can get him at a good enough value, not overpay, not, try to reach for him too soon in a draft, and then he starts getting healthier and healthier, then, okay, I've got that safety plan. If not, I still got Gus Edwards. And you know what they do with these running backs. So this is it's concerning, very, very, very concerning, which is why we're kind of making a big deal out of it. But I'm a persistent optimist. So I am going to, just put that good juju out into the ether to be like, get healthy, J.K. Dobbins, but tell everyone that you're not, so I can get you really late in the draft. Woo. I don't know if it's working. Do you think it's working?
I hope so. I do. He's a tremendous talent. And with that offense in particular, I want to see him with a full season and just let him go.
He better not be in preseason. If he's healthy, they better not run him in preseason, because that's like Murphy's Law. He's going to get guaranteed to get hurt. No. At
this point, I think the old school mentality is finally gone, where we don't see running backs in preseason anymore, thankfully, because it doesn't make any sense not to do that anyway. Right. My hope is with his talent, he's going to be able to get his opportunity, because I would love to see what he's able to do. Remember, the ghost of Devonta Freeman was actually fantasy relevant in this offense. Okay, just think about what J.K. Dobbins was able to do in that sense. So I love him, but we are a little bit concerned. So keep that in mind as we get closer to August. Hopefully, we'll get a little more clarification. What we want to do now, though, take a quick break. When we come back on the other side, we got wide receivers and tight ends to talk about. So everybody stay tuned to the MD's Fantasy Football Show. We'll be back right after this. Sweaty sack summer is approaching, and it's time for you to prioritize the comfort of your crotch. That's why the kings of crotch comfort, Manscaped, have spent 2 years designing the most comfortable boxer briefs out there. I've had the honor of testing out these new boxers, and I can say it's the softest fabric of any underwear. So breathable that it's like gills for your groin. They even trademarked the jewel pouch, so you know it's serious. I think it's time you invest in your family jewels, so let your bulge breathe and get 20% off and free shipping when you use the promo code BELLYUPFANTASY at Manscaped.com. Let's say you're on a date and your partner catches that Manscaped on the waistband of your underwear. It's almost guaranteed to raise some eyebrows and act like a billboard on the highway to Pleasure Town. This is thanks to the Lawnmower 4.0, the best electric trimmer for below-the-waist grooming. This trimmer offers skin-safe technology designed to trim hair on loose skin. Outside of just ball trimming, they're now focusing their efforts on helping out your thigh slappers in other ways with game-changing boxers. These boxer features include the Jewel Pouch, a pouch designed to cradle your boys in their own special space, lined with perforated performance fabric, and keep them well ventilated. Basically, just imagine your balls sipping pina coladas, chilling on a hammock on some tropical beach. Get 20% off and free shipping when you use the promo code BellyUpFantasy at manscaped.com. One more time. That's promo code BellyUpFantasy to get 20% off and free shipping. Once the Boxers 2.0 touch your sack, you'll never go back.
You're listening to the MD's Fantasy Football Show.
And we are back on the MD's Fantasy Football Show with, after playing a great commercial when you have two women on the show with you. But it's all good and fun. We are talking about the AFC North. I'm your host, Dan Mader. I'm joined here with stepmom Lauren Carpenter of the Fantasy Sports Writers Association. Very happy to have you on. We got the wide receivers and tight ends to talk about now. So let's kick it off with our obvious starter right off the bat.
Obvious starters.
Welcome back, Captain Obvious.
Yes, I am.
And of course, it's Jamar Chase, right? Jamar Chase, ADP wide receiver 3. I have him ranked at my wide receiver 3. He's awesome. He's great. He's electric. He's fantastic. Not much else to really say about him. The only thing, if you want to start diving into some of the minutia of it, is T. Higgins got off to a slow start. Not from a target perspective, but from an overall productions perspective last year. After he finally got over the hump, was about week 12. Week 12 through week 18, Higgins was actually a little bit ahead of Chase. He was wide receiver 6. Chase was wide receiver 7. And of course, we're nitpicking there, but just to kind of illustrate that there is a little bit of a possible, I don't even want to say downside, but you're drafting Chase as your wide receiver 3. You want him to perform there or be the wide receiver 1 overall. There's a chance maybe he's closer to that 5-6 range because T. Higgins is that good. But ultimately, are you worried about spending the draft capital on Jamar Chase at wide receiver 3?
No. Not worried at all. Not worried at all. I understand why some people can be turned off by it because it's like, oh, okay, well, it's not the obvious, right? It's not the old school Devontae Adams with Aaron Rodgers or the old school Tyreek Hill with Patrick Mahomes, which I'm still trying to wrap my head around that whole entire situation. And I don't know if I'm going to believe it until I actually visually see it in a game, but either way, I think this is great for both of these wide receivers. I'm not worried about Jamar Chase, and I'm also not worried about T. Higgins either.
Yeah, let's lock in T. Higgins real quick.
Lock him in.
It's a lock.
His ADP wide receiver 12. I'm actually right there with the ADP. I have him ranked at wide receiver 12 as well. And just talking about that start, if he gets off to that better start, he's a wide receiver 1. This offense can very much sustain 2 top 10 wide receivers. There's no doubt about it. We talked about what Joe Burrow might do as far as volume goes, how this offense might run. And again, I go back to the Tampa Bay example. Mike Evans, Chris Godwin, when they're both healthy, both out there on the field with Tom Brady, they're both wide receiver 1s. It's just how it kind of breaks down. With T. Higgins, let's have a little fun. What chances do you think it would have for Jamar Chase and T. Higgins to finish as the wide receiver 1 and 2 overall?
Oh, I like this. Is it likely? I don't think so, but it could be really, really, really close. But that would be awesome. And I think we live in a world where that could happen, but I don't know if it's going to be likely, but that was really exciting just to think about that. That was super cool.
I think it's one of the few times I think it's even possible.
Yeah.
So I kind of just wanted to
It's
put
on the
it out
table.
there.
It's on the table.
And that's why I urge you guys, if you're doing best ball drafts right now, which I do a lot of this time of year, because I feel like it's the best way to get prepared as I knock lights over here in my studio.
Oh, don't worry. My dog was literally like trying to eat through the door. So it's totally fine.
The one thing that I really want to see is that people start to double stack them, because right now Joe Burrow, he's going in that 5th round. He's a little bit higher in best ball leagues. So he's going in that 5th round territory. If you can make sure you early stack Chase and Higgins, you can still get Burrow. You can get all 3. I think it's going to be a way to go this season. And it has that kind of potential, that kind of opportunity. But let's move into another guy that might be a little bit more unsure of, but I still have him as a lock him in.
Lock him in.
It's a lock.
As I fix my lighting situation while we go to that little break too. That's how quick it is, people. That's how professional it is over here at the MD's Fantasy Football Show.
Like I said, meanwhile, my dog was being crazy and I'm like, bye, gotta go. I stuffed her in her crate. Poor thing.
We do the best we can. That's all we can ever
hey.
ask for. So Deontay Johnson, his ADP, wide receiver 14. I got him ranked at wide receiver 13. Everybody keeps questioning over and over and over again. Does it matter that you don't have Ben Roethlisberger anymore? And I keep saying no. I kind of made this point a little bit earlier. Trubisky and Kenny Pickett, what is their strengths? Intermediate to short passing. How is that different than Ben Roethlisberger? Yes, they can get let pass a little bit more down the line of scrimmage, but that means you're still going to be leaning on the guy who gets the best separation, the guy who runs the best routes. That's hands down Deontay Johnson. And what I don't think people realize is that Deontay Johnson, if he ever gets a competent quarterback, maybe he doesn't if he resigns with the Steelers, I don't know. But if he ever does, he's going to be a superstar wide receiver.
Oh, yes.
That's the talent level this guy has. I honestly, and I'm putting this out there now, I don't see a difference between him and Antonio Brown in his heyday. Very similar type of receivers that just get open because they run routes over and over and over again and get the separation. But do you have any concerns about Deontay Johnson being able to repeat his performance from last season?
I don't. And for two reasons here. He is going to be seeing the volume. Like, we just keep harping on this. I get it. But he's going to have so many targets. It's not going to matter. And like you said, these are the intermediate routes. I'm more worried about Chase Claypool. Like, I'm not worried about Deontay Johnson. And another thing, just because Ben Roethlisberger isn't there doesn't mean Deontay Johnson can't get it done. He got it done with Mason Rudolph and Duck Hodges. He's okay. Don't worry about him. Don't worry about him. He's going to be all right. Just by volume alone.
As much as I'm not a Trubisky and Kenny Pickett fan, they're still better than Mason Rudolph.
I know, I'm telling you. He was really good with those two options. So I'm not worried about Deontay Johnson.
Well, let's lump Chase Claypool and frankly the rest of the Steelers receivers into the same conversation real quick. Right now, Claypool, his ADP is at wide receiver 41. I got him ranked at wide receiver 52. And again, this goes back to these are not deep ball throwers that are replacing Ben Roethlisberger. I don't think he suddenly has the upside for him. And I was way down on him last year because I was pointing out the fact that if his touchdown efficiency goes down at all, this was not a guy who catches a high percentage of his targets. This is a guy who only runs 1 to 2 patterns. And I didn't see an improvement in any of those factors either. They draft George Pickens, which signifies to me, you ain't coming back this past season. I keep hearing crazy things about, oh, we might move him to tight end or we might flex him over here. So I guess let's start with the obvious. Does George Pickens, is there a chance that he just overtakes Claypool sooner rather than later?
I don't know about this year. There is a possibility that it could be the following year. This year, it might start. We might see that progression. And like we just keep coming back to this. And I'm sorry I'm repeating myself over and over again, but we're not talking about deep throwers here. These two guys are not. Mitchell Trubisky is not. Small hands Pickett is not. So it's just not what he is good at. And I don't want to call him a one-trick pony because that has a really negative connotation to it. That's not what I mean. But what I do mean is that he excels very well in a more limited capacity than what other players on that team have. So I don't know if he's going to be seeing the amount of targets and the amount of volume that's going to make him fantasy relevant, him meaning Chase Claypool. And that does open up the door for someone like Pickens to come in. I just don't know if the talent of quarterback is there quite yet. We'll see where that goes because that obviously is going to be the number one sign for both of those guys. So dynasty, not even a question for Pickens here. But for redraft, I'm staying completely away from those wide receivers. The only one I want is Deontay Johnson. I am staying away from Claypool. I faded him last year as well. The signs are on the wall here. And I think he could be gadgety, but people are really trying to think back to what he was as opposed to where he is going. And it's kind of dangerous territory. The recency bias here that we have from not even last year, but the year prior to that. I'm worried about it. Yeah.
And you're not being negative. You're putting out what it is. Claypool is not fantasy relevant unless he has the big play available to him.
Yes.
This is plain and simple. Just what it boils down to at the end of the day. I comped him to Martavis Bryant when he first came out in the NFL draft. And so far, he's kind of playing out the exact same way. And it's an exciting skill set. You love to see it. It's great for DFS. It's great for best ball, but not consistency when it comes to redraft, especially when he's in this situation with these quarterbacks that he's having to deal with. So we talked enough about the Steelers wide receivers. Let's talk about somebody who's really exciting and on my radar. I'm looking out for this guy.
Look out for
Rashad Bateman. Right now, his ADP at wide receiver 40. I got him at wide receiver 24. He is my back end wide receiver 2. Will the Ravens pass a little bit less? Probably, especially if they have a healthy Lamar Jackson, a healthy running game, and a healthy defense, because there's a lot of variables why they had to throw the ball as much as they did last season. But let's not forget, Marquise Brown had 140 targets last year. And
that shocked me. That shocked me when I saw that his vacated targets were that high. I'm like, when did that happen? Like, I don't recall seeing that many. What? It blew my mind because I was like, okay, there is a path for Mr. Bateman here. Continue. I didn't mean to interrupt you, but that blew me away when I saw that.
Absolutely. And I will tell you why you don't remember it, Lauren. You don't remember it because he had less than a 60% catch rate. That's why you don't remember it. It didn't produce into anything. Why? Because Marquise Brown does not fit the Greg Roman system. I was so happy they shipped him out to Arizona. He's going to be much better off in that system from overall productivity standpoint. Rashad Bateman, what's the difference between a Rashad Bateman and Sammy Watkins in his prime with Greg Roman in that similar type of offense? That's what he is. So he is a guy that I'm sitting there. You're drafting him as a wide receiver 4. It's an absolute steal. These are the guys that I go through my cheat sheet and I make my little notes for myself. And I say, this guy, make sure you draft him around the head of this ADP because I want to make sure I get him. And he's still a value if you go ahead and do that. I mean, go ahead. Talk about Rashad Bateman for me.
I love him. I'm throwing up hearts over here for anyone who's just listening and not watching. There's so much opportunity here for Rashad Bateman, and he really showed that he has the talent, and he flashed, as we like to say in the fantasy industry, last year. And with the departure of Hollywood Brown, only gives him even more opportunity, and he was able to get it done, which is super impressive. And I am very, very excited. And I'm mostly excited by exactly what you said, Dion. It's this value. Even if you did draft him a little bit higher than what he's going at, it's still a value for what you're going to get out of him. Of course, if he can stay healthy, blah, blah, blah. We always throw that caveat out in there. Because really, your 2 pass catchers on that team are going to be Mark Andrews and Rashad Bateman. So when they throw, which they will have to, it's going to be those 2 guys.
Yeah, it's consolidated. So I don't care if you're a run-first team. That's fine. Last year, they were 54% pass team to 46% run. That's the first time since Greg Roman's taken over, they're actually a little bit more pass than they were run. Even if they revert back and go back to 48% of the time being a pass team, you're still looking at Rashad Bateman easily walking into 120 targets alongside of Mark Andrews. That is top 12 wide receiver volume level. Now, I don't quite have him that high. You still got to prove it. But this is a guy who fits that system, who can run all the routes. You want Rashad Bateman this year. Don't let him slip and fall to you.
Don't let him. Oh, no. And anyone listening to this, Rashad Bateman sucks. Those people who are in my league, you know who you are. He's terrible.
There's another guy that we got to look out for that I'm not as excited about.
Look out for.
We're looking out for Amari Cooper. Now, his ADP right now is wide receiver 19. I do have him ranked at wide receiver 17, but that's purely in reflection of if Deshaun Watson were to play week 1 and he has that quarterback and he's the wide receiver 1 and really, frankly, the only true wide receiver on that team, the volume will be there. So I have him ranked there until we finally get some updates on the Watson of it all. Assuming, though, going back the other way, the more interesting analysis of it is that if it's Jacoby Brissett. Now, Brissett can feature one wide receiver, but it's going to kind of be like Ben featuring one wide receiver with the exception of not having as many targets available to him. And that's my problem with Amari Cooper. I think he's going to be incredibly inefficient. He could be looking at 100 to 110 targets, possibly just because of the given situation that he finds himself in. But he's always been a low touchdown guy. That hasn't really been a big play guy throughout his career. And if he's getting targeted closer and closer to the line of scrimmage, maybe at best he's a Jarvis Landry, which would kind of make him more of a wide receiver 3. But do you see anything different with Amari Cooper?
I'm on the same page as you. I am fading Amari Cooper into the lonely sunset with tumbleweeds, which is Cleveland, just so you know. Anyway, I'm totally ripping on Cleveland right now. I've never even been there. I'm kidding, guys. No, but Amari Cooper does worry me for the exact same reasons that you're saying. I don't care who's a quarterback. This situation is just not only is there quarterback questions that we have to figure out here too, but just the offense on its own. Like I said, it's going through Kareem Hunt. It's going through Nick Chubb. Kareem Hunt is an excellent pass catcher as well. And there's just not enough volume there for me to want to have him on my squad where he's going in ADP. Now, if he starts falling, then that's something I wouldn't mind, but way too rich for my blood where he's at right now. And it's not going to be the same Amari Cooper that we know of in Dallas. Just understand that. And then you won't be surprised if you take him.
100%. A lot of this has to do with drafting against the ADP. You don't want to overdraft. He's got potential of being overdrafted written all over him. As much as we talked up the Bengals offense, there is one guy I'm a bit worried about.
Be cautious of.
That's Tyler Boyd. Now, his ADP right now is wide receiver 47, so you wouldn't be spending a huge price tag on him anyway, but I do have him at wide receiver 58, so I'm staying far, far away from Tyler Boyd. Now, I will say this in his defense. It surprised me, back when I go through my numbers, that he actually finished the wide receiver 31 last season in half-point PPR leagues, and it shocked me he finished that high because there wasn't a time and place I could ever think of where I wanted to start with Tyler Boyd. And when I dove into it, I looked back at my consistency grades, and that's because, well, he never had a top 12 finish. He had no ceiling to his game whatsoever. So that's part of it. He's a great receiver. He's a great talent. Is there any chance he can get into more of the target rotation going on between the other two, or is just those are just his guys, and this is how it's going to be?
The second part, the latter. I love Tyler Boyd too. Like, I was super excited when Jamar Chase was drafted, and then I just became super sad because it was kind of obvious what was going to happen here. It was either going to be T. Higgins, likely Tyler Boyd. Again, this is one of those unique situations where they are such a talented elite team now with sustainability for multiple pass catchers that if Tyler Boyd falls late enough and I need to fill out my bench, or I need to, I want to snag a guy speculatively, he's going to be on the top of that list. Because God forbid anything happens to any of those wide receivers, at least I have Tyler Boyd because he's going to be getting targets then. So if he can fall late enough, then I won't mind having him. But if he is going too high, you can't rely on him. You're not going to have that consistency that you look for in fantasy. He's just not going to. And it's not because he's not good. That team is really, really, really good. It's just that Jamar Chase and T. Higgins are also very, very good. So there's a lot of talent that goes around there too. And unfortunately, someone does have to suffer, the lack of targets because of that. And I think that is Tyler Boyd. But if he is at the right price, I still might pick him up.
Let's talk about that right now, because right now I don't think he's at that right price. The ADP at wide receiver 47, you think to yourself,
it's way too high.
It's a low end wide receiver 4. Like, it's not that bad, but it is, because when you look at who else is involved in that range, you're talking about Christian Kirk, you're talking about Chris Olave, you're talking about Alan Lazard, all guys that have way higher upside.
Give me Alan Lazard all day long.
Exactly. I would take any one of those three guys over Tyler Boyd there. And that's where he still has to come down before I start to consider him in my range. But if he goes anyway, I do want to say for dynasty standpoint, he's supposed to leave Cincinnati after this season. Keep your eye on him. Don't give up on him from the dynasty standpoint, because he is a very good receiver. He winds up in a better situation where he's up more closer to the top of the food chain. Tyler Boyd will be back to being a pretty consistent guy that you can rely on for fantasy purposes.
And what would be really helpful is if he's in another uniform, then I won't constantly be mistaking him for T. Higgins, because their numbers, aren't they like 86 and like
86 and 83?
83.
Yeah.
It's impossible. So when I see the 8 when someone's celebrating a touchdown, I'm like, Tyler Boyd. Oh, every time. I'm sick of that. I don't want to be confused any longer.
Well, that was like, and I think a lot of people have had this example, but that was like for me last year when watching Saquon Barkley and Devontae Booker. I couldn't tell which one was which. And that was what was sad about Saquon last year. They looked actually the same athletically. But that's a story for another day. Let's talk about our tight ends. Let's talk about an obvious start for the tight ends.
Obvious starters.
Welcome back, Captain Obvious.
Yes, I am.
Mark Andrews, you made me look like a genius last year because I was huge on Mark Andrews.
Me too. Yay.
ADP tight end 2. I have him ranked at tight end 2. I think last year I had him ranked, I believe, it was at least inside the top 4. I might have had him in the top 3 over Darren Waller. I don't expect him to get 153 targets again this season. I'll put that out there. But reduce that by 30 to 40. We're still talking 110 targets. The only tight ends who get over 100 targets on a consistent year-to-year basis are the top 3 tight ends. It's Travis Kelce. Darren Waller might not even be that candidate this year. Kyle Pitts will probably hit that mark this season. Those are the guys that are in that range. That's why he always has that big floor. I think he did take the next step up in showing his athletic ability last season. And I keep going back to Lamar getting more efficient again in the red zone. He gets more efficient in the red zone. Mark Andrews will be a big part of that. The touchdown, there is room for him to actually grow in that department, believe it or not, for Mark Andrews there. So, yeah, I mean, is there anything, let's put it this way for you. is there any reason why you don't think Andrews would finish as a top 3 tight end this next
Oh
season?
no, he's up there. He'll be up there. And I'm actually not as worried about his target share as you are. I don't think it's going to drop by very much because don't forget, Hollywood Brown is no longer there. And that is 140 targets that are up for grabs without much replacement in the meantime, right? So I'm not really as worried. And honestly, I just like you said, I think we might only be going up if we can, increase that touchdown number too. I'm very excited about Mark Andrews, and I'm glad he pulled through for me because I was the same way, and I didn't want to be like fool me thrice. Shame on everyone, right? I needed some Mark Andrews love in my life, and I'm happy that it all came to fruition last year because it made me very happy to see that. But I think he has every opportunity to finish number 1.
Well, and I'll put this way. He would be my number 1 if it wasn't for the fact that Tyreek Hill wasn't on the Chiefs anymore. And that's where I was just like, all right, I have to keep Travis Kelce there because your target share, it might be insane without Tyreek Hill. So, but if it wasn't for that, I think I was about ready to make that switch had it not been for that trade earlier on. But let's lock in this next guy.
Lock him in.
It's a lock.
I'm locking in Pat Freiermuth as a top 12 tight end. His ADP right now, tight end 10. I have him at tight end 11. That's more of just a reflection of it's a quarterback switch. Will you be targeted as much as you were with Ben Roethlisberger? Maybe some of the volume takes a step back. He did have an incredibly high touchdown rate at 8.8% last season. That could revert to the more average, about 6.4% for tight ends, especially for the top echelon tight ends. So he might not be the top 8 guy that he was last season, but is he on your radar as a top 12 guy? Or is there other tight ends in that range that you just rather take a shot on because you can draft them a little bit later and they have a little more potential? What are you thinking?
Oh, I love me some Pat Freiermuth. Yes, please. I do. I believe he can finish in his top 10, actually, if everything goes according to plan. Like, we all wanted to. I think there is a path for him to finish as a tight end 1. And I'm not worried about it. And he's one of those tight ends that you can wait on, which is rare, right? So we have our elites and then everybody else. Like that's kind of how, the tight end landscape looks like. And he is one of those kind of sneaky pickups that you can, fill out your roster with some of those bigger names at other positions. And then you can get him a little bit later in the draft. And I like what he's able to do because he's always on the field. He's always on the field. He's always available. He's a big body red zone target for either a rookie quarterback or a perennial, almost used to be starting backup quarterback in Mitchell Trubisky. So I like what he can do. I like what he's shown that he can do. And he has the opportunity, which I think obviously besides volume, opportunity is the next thing that you need in fantasy football. So I agree. I really like Pat Freiermuth as well.
Yeah, it's funny. So I find myself in a bittersweet situation with him because I agree with all that. I think he very much can be a top 10 guy. He belongs as a top 12 guy. Right now, his ADP would have him going in the 8th round, roughly about there. But I also feel like there's other guys that are right behind him that I'm like, if I can wait to the 12th round and take somebody off an Albert O or punt on the position and take a couple of those guys, I'm torn about which one I'd rather do at this moment. But Pat Freiermuth is that guy. If you don't get those top elite echelon guys and you just want to be safe at the tight end position, you don't want to be streaming all year long, that's what you go with there in the 8th round. So his price is exactly where he should be, right there with Pat Freiermuth. A couple other guys I want to look out for in the So I'm looking out for David Njoku. Now, he has probably kind of been a buzzword around the fantasy industry as a sleeper tight end. Right now his ADP is at tight end 16. I got him at tight end 21. Couple of reasons. Even if Watson were to play, Watson doesn't have the habit of featuring his tight ends. Now, you can make the argument he hasn't had a really good tight end, and that would be completely and utterly fair. But I would also argue this. Just because they paid David Njoku doesn't really mean anything in Cleveland. They paid Austin Hooper a crap load of money to rotate him with 2 other tight ends and not really give him the opportunity to be the guy. So I don't think that means as much when you're talking about the Cleveland Browns. And while I like Njoku's talent, he finds ways to just not be on the field all the time and not be available. But Lauren, are you part of the David Njoku who can be a sleeper tight end this year?
Oh, no. Stay far away. If you haven't sensed a trend, I'm fading Cleveland, except for Nick Chubb and Kareem Hunt. Just so you know, in case it wasn't super obvious. like our Captain Obvious graphic that we have going, which I absolutely love. No, I don't know. Money does not equal fantasy points. Okay. Just that is just how it goes. Like I stay away. I'm like struggling to speak. That's how much I'm like, repulsed. I can't. No, don't do it. I used to be a huge David Njoku fan too, but the way that everything has been turning, if you will, it's not in his favor. I don't trust it. I'm staying as far away as I can.
There's a lot of red flags. There really
Lots.
is. The things going for him now, of course, that, Hooper's out of the way, and we are looking at tight ends can sometimes break out a little bit later on in their careers, and we do have a precedence for that. And that's all fine and dandy. But with everything going on right now in Cleveland, I think there's just other tight ends going in that range. Especially now Cameron Brate. Cameron Brate should be going about that range. That's who I would be looking at instead of a David Njoku for sure. Let's talk about our last guy real quick.
Look out for...
Let's look out for Hayden Hurst on the flip side. So no one's going to draft Hayden Hurst. His ADP is at tight end 27. I have him ranked at tight end 25. So you're not going to draft him. But I think his name, when I already know, I can already see it happening. Every waiver wire show, his name's going to come up in my tight end grouping as far as a waiver wire tight end to go ahead and check out. First of all, he's going to be on the field all the time because Hayden Hurst actually blocks. Look at a la Tyler Higbee. I don't know if there's a real difference between Hayden Hurst's talent and Tyler Higbee's talent and the way Zach Taylor is probably going to want to use him. Is that a fantasy relevant tight end every single week? No, but when you're looking at streaming options, it's definitely a guy you're considering because he's going to be on the field all the time, and he can be effective in the red zone. CJ Usama last year, he finished as the tight end 19, and he wasn't out in the field all the time because he doesn't block the way Hayden Hurst does.
Mm-hmm.
So what do you think about Hurst this season? Do you think we should keep our eye out on him?
I think if you don't have a last round dart throw, he's one that you wouldn't be wasted. But like you said, he's likely going to be on the waiver wire, and we will be talking about how much fab we have to put on him to get him after week 1, because, without a doubt, he's probably going to score 2 touchdowns week 1.
Right. I
mean, that's just how it's going to go because no one has him on their team. And it's like, oh my God, Hayden Hurst, how did we ever lose faith? And then it's going to be a similar situation here. I'm intrigued. I'm intrigued with him because we have been talking about the Bengals and their ability to sustain multiple pass catchers in that offense. But there's a hierarchy here where these targets go. And I don't like the lack of consistency that position for the Bengals sees. Now, he does have higher opportunity, just like you said, because he is a better pass blocker. And just beefier than CJ Usama. I don't know. For some reason, that just makes a difference. I love Hayden Hurst, by the way. He's super cool. He has a really great mental health foundation that is really, really neat that I usually try to be a part of. Anyway, I digress.
That marathon, by the way, that marathon is going to happen in a couple of weeks, I believe, right?
I know, and I'm going to be out of town. I'm normally on that, and I'm going to be out of town, and I won't be able to do it. I'm super bummed.
Yeah, but everyone, make sure you go ahead and check that out because it is.
Yeah, it's really cool. It's really cool. So I'm intrigued. So that's why I wouldn't mind taking like a dart throw on him if I have the room, if I have the room on my bench to do so, or if I don't have any other names. Let's say it's like the very last one and he's there. Definitely going to keep my eye on him though, because he does have the talent and he will be on the field. But there are other ones that I know are going to be a little bit more productive, at least in the beginning. I think will be more productive.
Yeah, I definitely.
If he scores 2 touchdowns in week 1, we need to make some kind of money.
All hell's gonna break loose. I will look. I'll put it this way. I will have him on some of my DFS teams. That will be a thing.
Now I will too.
That's gonna do it for today's show. Lauren, had a wonderful time having you on. It was absolutely a great show. At least I think so. It was.
Well, even though my dog was trying to talk the whole time and chew through the door.
It's on par for the course of this show.
Poor Ellie.
We're giving MD Nation exactly what they've been asking for.
Yes.
Danielle, how about you come back on in here real quick as we close out the show too? So guys, make sure you check her out, Stepmom Lauren. But what do you have coming up that we can all go ahead and check out?
Oh my, I don't know if we have enough time. So I work for lots of different networks, but for all the basically off-season work, it's a lot of article work, a couple videos I have out here and there, but you guys can check out all of my work on my website, which is stepmomlauren.com. And you can find me on all the social medias, the socials, as those young kids say. Daniel's like, no, you don't. No one says that. No one ever says that. But you can find me on social media at stepmomlauren, Lauren. Come talk to me. I really like chatting about football.
Absolutely, absolutely. So look, guys, we're gonna be on vacation next week, so there won't be a show for that. But July 21st, we're coming back with the NFC West with Bob Lung. We're going to talk a little bit of the Fantasy Expo because we are going to be going to the Fantasy Expo this year, running a booth. Oh, you're gonna be there?
I'm going to be there.
Laura's gonna be. Oh, we're gonna get to meet in person. I can't wait now. Super excited. Absolutely awesome. So yeah, we're gonna talk about that and what you're gonna have to look forward to, and a little NFC West talk as well. Danielle, you do some content too for the Belly Up Sports Network while you're interning. So where can people follow you at right now?
You can follow me at Danielle Dubois on Twitter and Danielle_Dubs on Instagram. And make sure to follow the Belly Up Sports TikTok, just Belly Up Sports, to see what content I post for the company.
And she does a great job. She's got a bright future in front of her. Guys, we're going to see you real soon in a couple of weeks. Everybody take care.